Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about something that I'm really excited about. And you know, I say this a lot about different Star Wars projects, and that's because I go into it head first hoping that, well, for the most part, we'll enjoy it and nothing can really go wrong. But as we know, we've been, proven wrong as projects and shows have come out, but I'm always hopeful, and I think that's, one of the main themes of Star Wars that George Lucas has taught me is to have hope. And so anyways, I can only speculate on the things I can theorize on and hope for. And for me, the show Acolyte, hopefully, if it's going to go the way I think it will in here, and from some of the leaks and so on, I think it's going to be really cool. Now, we just got some information regarding this show, and it takes place just 100 years before Episode 1. Now, this I'm going to read, a brief quote from Daphne Keane, who is the girl who played in one of my favorite movies, which is Logan. And she actually did a really fantastic job. So hopefully, that acting and that sort of sheer viciousness will also be portrayed in this show. Now, this show is said to be a female lead, and it takes place 100 years before Episode 1, before the prequels. And she has gone on to say in an interview, which she isn't allowed to say much, obviously, you know how those Disney contracts are. Remember Obi-Wan Kenobi, he couldn't say anything for like 20 years. While contracts dictate that Keane isn't exactly allowed to reveal much about the Acolyte, this early she did have some tidbits to offer. I can tease that it's a prequel. She joked when speaking with Tech Radar. No, I mean, as you know, it's set 100 years before the prequel movies, and it's kind of an explanation of how the Sith infiltrated the Jedi. It's a Sith-led story, which has never been done before. This would be an interesting new take on Star Wars franchise, especially since the Sith have almost always been seen as nothing but unambiguous villains with pretty much since the beginning. So yeah, that's true, but the thing is, many fans have been asking for more nuanced takes on Star Wars for decades, so this possibility of seeing sympathetic Sith in the Acolyte could truly be that breath of fresh air audiences have been looking for. It's always been known that this series will focus on the final days of the High Republic, offering a look at when the conflict that ultimately leads to the fall of the Republic and the Jedi Order begins. But seeing that from the side of the baddies is certainly an intriguing idea. Now, this is something that I have always really been interested in. A lot of us, love the bad guys. We love the Empire. They're really cool, and we want to see more of their points of view of things. I think Andor did a fine job of that from more so the ISB standpoint of things, with much more of the lower personnel in the Empire, compared to like Palpatine, Tarkin, Krennic, Thrawn, focusing on the other people. Now, what we haven't seen is focusing on the Force users. We focused on the Jedi. We haven't really focused on the Sith all that much from their points of view. And one of the reasons why the Plagueis novel is my favorite Star Wars novel, probably of all time, tied with the Bane trilogy, is because it goes into such amazing depth and detail regarding the Sith. And this is hundreds of years before Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I say that because it focuses on Darth Tenebrous. Tenebrous was Darth Plagueis' master, and Darth Plagueis was Palpatine's master. Darth Vader's master is Palpatine. If you're new to Star Wars, there you go. Now, the interesting thing about Darth Tenebrous was that he was very sciencey, and he lived well before, a few hundred years before the prequel trilogy. So this time period, while it may focus on these new Jedi and these new characters and whatever, and you guys have seen the leaked photos, this period in Star Wars, I think, is really interesting because they can incorporate, if they're going to incorporate what Daphne Keane is talking about, which is that we will be focusing on a kind of explanation of how the Sith infiltrated the Jedi. It's a Sith-led story which has never been done before. A story about how the Sith infiltrated the Jedi is literally the Darth Plagueis novel. Now, this is what also worries me. As excited as I am for this show and the possibility that it will include Darth Tenebrous, maybe Darth Plagueis, maybe even Palpatine if they want to flash forward a little bit, is that it can really change a lot with the Plagueis novel. And that is my main concern, because the Plagueis novel for me is such an unbelievable relic that I think should really be cherished and respected. And as we know, they don't really, care about that stuff. They, it's what's legends is legends, and they want to move forwards. However, you can't deny that Plagueis is canon. Palpatine did mention him in Revenge of the Sith, so whatever they may want to say about him not existing or whatever, or that being just something made up that Palpatine said, no way. I'm a firm believer that, well, at least this is how I sleep at night, is that whatever George Lucas signed off on when he was in charge of Lucasfilm, when he owned his company, is what still remains today. So I'm not in the idea or the ideology that when Disney came along, they abolished a whole bunch of stuff just to make way for their own stories. Sure, that's fine and all, but I'd rather see that stuff as legends, and I see the old stuff that George stamped with approval as canon. So you may do whatever you want, but that's me, and that's how I see things. So to me, the Plagueis novel is real. You know, Labyrinth of Evil, the book between episode 2 and 3, is real. All of these different events that happen in Star Wars with all of these books that George signed off on, you know, the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, unbelievable detail from Matthew Stover. And if you didn't know, I interviewed Matthew Stover. I had the pleasure of speaking with him on the channel, and you can go find that interview on the Rule of Two podcast on this channel. So I did that with Mark, and we had a great time talking with Matthew. He's a very intelligent guy, and he elaborated that George was very, very near and dear to that story, and he had to sign off and everything. So my point being, George knew what was going on with the continuity of Star Wars, for the most part. There was some stuff he didn't really care about. Like, I don't think he really cared about Mara Jade and all this stuff. That's going far out. But the stuff that's like pretty close to the prequel trilogy, I think he was very close to and signed off on, from what I've been told by people who worked with him. So, that being said, Darth Tenebrous is an extremely fascinating character. He was very old. He was much older than Plagueis, lived to be much older than Palpatine, and he was a Bith. Not a bitch, a Bith. And they're extremely precise beings. And they live to be pretty old, like 200, 250 years old. So the story goes like this, okay? So how the Darth Plagueis novel starts, essentially, and I'm paraphrasing because it's been a while since I've actually listened to it and read it. But essentially, they go to this planet, they go to this mining planet, and Plagueis ends up killing his master in a mining accident. Now, the mining accident wasn't Plagueis' fault or anything. He ends up trying to figure that out later, and it leads him to Naboo, which there he discovers Palpatine, and that's where the story really unfolds. But to get there, we discover that he and Tenebrous, his master, got into this mining accident, and Tenebrous sees that Plagueis is now taking advantage of the situation and trying to kill him. So the explosion happens, Tenebrous contains the explosion with the Force, he was powerful, and Plagueis uses that moment to kill his master, because, you know, that's what the Sith do, they turn on each other. And so Tenebrous is really impressed. He's like, I'm really happy that you tried to kill me, like, you have now succeeded me, I have done my job as a Sith master. But then he realizes that Plagueis is going to die because he needs a rebreather on this planet and he can't survive. So as his midichlorians start to leave his body and the Force starts to leave his body, he's able to consciously see certain things, and he does this essence transfer. So like what Palpatine did in episode 9 or whatever with essence transfer, this is the original form of that. This is what Tenebrous did, and he transferred himself into his apprentice's body, into Plagueis' body. And he was basically able to see Plagueis' death himself and saw, oh no, Plagueis is going to die. He's going to be killed by his own apprentice, which is Palpatine, when he's drunk in his sleep. And he starts freaking out, and he leaves Plagueis' body because he realizes, oh no, like, I'm not going to be alive long enough to transfer my essence into the Chosen One, because that was his whole plan, and live on forever. So he gets out of there, and he's just like these like microbes, he's like floating in midichlorian form, and then he tries to go back into his body, but then he looks at it, or rather, you know, like feels it or sees it, and sees that it's like a skeleton, it's like withered away. And he just realized that he has spent like the last, I don't know, 10 to 100 years perhaps, in this moment where he's just like thought to himself. So time passed very differently for him, super quick for him, but in the real time, it was like 100 years or whatever, decades or more. And so he starts to freak out, and that's when the novel, like, it says something that I'll never forget. And it was at this moment Tenebrous wished he had a mouth to scream. And so he was just stuck in this sort of like stasis for all eternity. He was immortal, you know, but he was just stuck there with no body or vessel to go into. So, hey, maybe if they want to pick up that story somewhere where they, you know, Tenebrous finds a body or vessel to go into, that'd be pretty dope. But until they do that, we can really start to go into the story of Tenebrous. We could even like just touch on him a little bit, and maybe in the background, dude, like we could see Plagueis or something like that. I don't want to set myself up for, you know, this kind of excitement, but something like this could be so freaking cool. Like even just seeing them walk in the background of somewhere. Holy shit, I think that would like connect stories so freaking well. And like, you know, they're going off to like, maybe this is Tenebrous' demise, or perhaps this is where they go on a mission together at some point. I don't really know, but imagine seeing those two together. And I know this is not the point of Acolyte. I know that's at the very least scenario. Now, if they actually incorporate Tenebrous, I would lose my shit. I would think that is the most cool thing that they have done to be. And that was really like an important thing for me with Star Wars, was the interconnectivity with everything, with how the prequels just flowed really well into the original trilogy. And then how they did, of course, the Clone Wars with, episode 2 having a nice bridge towards episode 3. And for me, that was something that was really important too, because it's like you got like a good gap where a lot of things happen in Star Wars, which now you can kind of, and that was neat. And it makes Revenge of the Sith just more embellished, more bold. It's got more tendrils. It's got more things to kind of connect to. And I liked that. So I love seeing these like little things in Star Wars that could potentially connect to a different time, or we could see a character where they are off doing their own thing and we continue the main story. And it just kind of like expands the world, in my opinion. I know a lot of people might say, oh, that makes the world smaller. I totally disagree. I think if you have these characters like that are the main characters kind of walking around, or a mention of something to do with them, I think it just connects everything more so. Now you can overdo that and all that, but I think just a little drop of it, like, do they really mean Plagueis? There's a Bith that is very, very powerful, and we haven't been able to track him for a while or something, but there is legend of a Bith Lord, a Bith Dark Lord, who has been training an apprentice in secret, and he has learned, and rumor has it he has learned the ability of immortality and essence transfer, or something like that. Or his apprentice is extremely powerful and has been working on immortality and how to cheat death, or on the study of midichlorians. I think that would be really cool. And I know, of course, that's not the point of Acolyte. We're going to go into the detail of the Acolyte leaks, which I think were really cool. If you weren't at the Nerd Theory stream, like I think maybe a month ago, we went over them. That was pretty sweet. I think the story's going to be pretty cool. I'll briefly mention that it's going to be about like these Jedi, supposedly, these Jedi going to this village. They're going to be protecting the village from these raiders. And they say in transfer of us, in exchange of us protecting you, we want a Force-sensitive child. They give them the child. The village gives them the child. And then when the raiders come, the Jedi aren't there to protect them. And they basically abolish their contractual agreement. And they gave them their word that they would protect the village. And one of the girls, who I think is the sister of the Force-sensitive child that they took, now seeks revenge against the Jedi for allowing the raiders to slaughter their village. Supposedly, that's the story. Rumors and stuff might be wrong, and leaks might be wrong, but that's what the word on the street is. And to me, that's a pretty cool story, man. That's pretty fun. I think that would be really interesting, and it opens up a lot of access and a lot of doors to a lot of the Legends characters. And look, maybe I'm setting myself up for disappointment. I know a lot of things in Star Wars now really don't have much to do with Legends or the books or the past, but it's never too late to kind of add something in there, or perhaps dream. After all, the channel name is Star Wars Theory, so this is my theory, that maybe we're going to be able to actually go into Plagueis or Tenebrous and learn a little bit about that chapter of Star Wars, because it's quite a big chapter, and it's, frankly, the reason everything happens the way it does with Anakin, who is the main character of Star Wars, which George Lucas has said many times. So, for me, this story is much more than just a cool story about, a Sith acolyte, a dark side acolyte, or how the Sith came to power at the time of the Republic. It's more so how we can involve all of these other segments in Star Wars into this time, which is now going over the Sith. So it's very relevant. If we're going to be talking about the Sith in this time, who are the most prominent and powerful Sith? And I think Darth Tenebrous, very famous, very powerful, and his apprentice Darth Plagueis, word must have gotten out somewhere that these guys are around. And if anyone's going to know about them, it's going to be the Sith themselves, or the Darksiders themselves, as they hide in the shadows from the Jedi, from these High Republic Jedi. So anyways, I'm pretty excited for this show. I say that all the time, and I'm often let down with many things. Case in point being the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which, as you know, my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, Obi-Wan and Anakin. And I just felt that they missed the mark on a lot of things. There were some things that were really cool, really nice, but a lot just, let me down. And I hope that this show, seeing as how it doesn't touch on any of the legendary characters, may have a lot of room to shine. And considering it's focused on Force users, which I think is what Star Wars really is, could be very promising. So I hope we get some more information about the show. I hope the show comes out in 2023, along with Ahsoka. And if that's going to be the case, then that's going to be a really jam-packed year of Star Wars. And I'm very excited to share it with you all. So please let me know what you think down below in the comments. Bit of a rant, bit of a chat, but I love having these with you guys. And if you stayed for the whole thing, leave a like and let me know what your thoughts are, because pretty long, convoluted talking explanation, but that's what I like to do. So, when you come to my channel, I want it to feel like, you're stepping foot in a local comic shop and you're talking to your buddies, and then you go to the comment section and it's like a whole bunch of people that you have seen before and whatever, and you chat and you debate, you argue respectfully, and you just have a good time and you just escape a little bit. And that's really the whole point for me. So love you guys. Thanks for listening to what I think, and I would love to now read what you think. So catch you on the next video. Until then, remember, Force will be with you always.